Chris Rock or Eddie Murphy?
Eddie Murphy.
Martin Lawrence or Dave Chappelle?
I mean, yeah. Yeah.
Welcome to the most overrated, underappreciated, most viewed, underviewed podcast of all time. Welcome to the Prince of Fresh Air. I'm, of course, your host, the beloved, the most charismatic man in entertainment. Beat that, Dwayne The Rock Johnson. Anyway, I'm just kidding. We're back for another episode. Thank you guys for always tuning in, checking out the show. I always appreciate everybody for tuning in. But, this is not about me. I'm not doing the show solo this week. Nope. I got a special guest today. Now you might be wondering who it is. Who? Well, no need to fear because the most charismatic man is here to give you that information. So my next guest, she is a wonderful professional stand-up comedian, filmmaker, entertainer, performing at the Comedy Store in LA, Edinburgh Fringe Festivals. She hosts a show, Great Culture, and Gnarly Girls with over 800,000 followers across social media. She's killing it in the entertainment industry. She's a businesswoman. She's a comedian. She does it all. She does more than me, and I do a lot. So please help me introduce Toni Nagy to the podcast.
I love that introduction. I feel so seen by you.
I try. I'm better than Shannon Sharp and all of them people. No, let me stop. I'm gonna leave the jokes to you because you're the stand-up comedian. How's life? How's everything? How's 2025 been for you?
I feel like 2025 is both incredibly brutal from a cultural context, a social context, and a personal context. But there's something about it that I also feel is somewhat exciting because I think there has been more cultural conversations that are pushing back on the status quo than I personally have ever seen in my couple decades on the planet. So that to me is slightly optimistic.
One of the reasons why I wanted to have you on is because I often have a lot of, people in the entertainment industry, being a fellow actor, entertainer myself, but very rarely I ever have women on, especially women of your caliber on the show. So I can actually have meaningful conversations with you. So we're going to get right into this and we're going to jump right into it because I want to talk about stand-up comedy for 1 second because I love stand-up comedy. Ari Spears, Dave Chappelle, I love Andrew Dice Clay, George Carlin, list goes on and on. But for you, how do you deal with hecklers? I was just watching the Tom Brady roast. I don't know if you ever watched that with
Yeah, I
Jeff
have.
Ross and
Yeah.
all of them. Amazing. How do you deal with like hecklers and stuff like that? Being a stand-up comedian, especially being a woman, how do you deal with that?
Well, I think when you're a woman and you get on stage, two things happen. You have the male reaction to you, and then you have the classic female reaction to you. And the way you navigate and negotiate how to make different genders, political views, ages like you is complicated because you need to be confident but not arrogant. You need to be comfortable but not complacent. So there's all this choreography that happens within the first 30 seconds of you walking on stage where people are going to immediately form an opinion of you. And the question is, how do you either get them on your side if their initial opinion is negative, or how do you keep them with you if their initial opinion is positive? And I think stand-up is, for me personally, it's about connecting and relating to someone. Even if their life experience is completely different than yours, they have to paint a picture that you can relate to and identify with in order for them to feel connected to you. So I think that like what happens with a lot of stand-up comics is they get really angry at the crowd if the crowd isn't reacting to them in the way that they anticipated or want. And so then it becomes like contentious and resentful. So if you get a heckler and you're feeling contentious and resentful about that heckler, then it's going to get a little tense. And I know some people like that tension when a heckler and a comedian combat and it gets brutal. I personally like to see hecklers as an opportunity to play and to see how I can turn the circumstance around to silence them. Like I
Yeah.
really want them to shut the fuck up ultimately. And I had a strange experience the other day where there was like a group of people and they were playing Uno, like the card game
At a comedy show?
at a comedy show. They
You
were
can't
just
make this stuff up.
No, they were just like playing Uno, and every single person that was going on before me was dealing with like a crowd of people that were just talking amongst each other, and then would like every once in a while just like yell out to the comedian, "Oh, that's kind of funny." But they were so disruptive and so distracting, but no one was addressing it. Like all the other comics were kind of trying to ignore it or pretend it wasn't happening. And when I got on stage, like not only did I address it, but I was like, I don't know why I said this, but I figured out the way to silence them where I told them about a dream I had where I had this dream that I fucked my ex boyfriend's grandparents. They were like really tiny, like
Uh,
incredibly small. Like, and so I was like, I told this group of people, I'm like, I had this dream of fucking my ex-boyfriend's tiny grandparents, and like they just kind of fit inside of me, like a tampon, but it was still a fucking. And then I asked them, I'm like, what do you think that dream means? And then they were like, I don't know. And then I started talking about Freud and how all these women in the 1920s were considered hysterical, and Freud as a psychiatrist was interested. He was like, why are all
mhm.
these bitches like freaking out all the time? And he came up with the revolutionary concept of maybe I should talk to some of these chicks and like ask them what's up. So he had these chicks come to him and he was like, what's going on? Why are you acting this way? And they were like, oh, my father's raping me or my husband is graping me. And these were all Freud's friends that were sending their daughters and their wives and like other wealthy men. And Freud was so confused by this concept that like these husbands and these fathers were graping their wives and daughters, that he just came up with the theory that like, oh, children are sexually attracted to their parents.
Interesting.
Yeah. And then I just
Okay.
truly the room silent. They stopped talking, and then I just went back to my comedy. So that was how I dealt with that heckler situation. They never said another word. Silence.
See, knowing me, I would have said something stupid. I'm not gonna say it now because FBI. But yeah, that's interesting. I've never heard someone playing Uno at a comedy show, but
Mhm.
I will say one time I went to my first stand up show. I went to see Andrew Schultz on the Upper East Side. I used to live by the comic strip,
Yeah.
and one of my buddies was heckling him while he was on stage, and he looks at me. Obviously, I stand out a little bit, and so he started cracking on all of us, and I went back with him. And we did it for like 5-10 minutes, and it was fun. It was a good time. He came up after the show, said, "You did a good job. You hang with me." But I always wonder because I often see other comedians, especially of higher caliber. Some of them don't like it. They don't like people disrupting the show. And then some people actually welcome it. Like you said, it's a challenge. It makes you think. It makes you off the cuff, and it makes you allow that experience that you have kind of shine a little bit. And so, like for you, when you see situations like that, and there was a video I saw on Instagram of this one comedian. This one lady, she was doing a set. I think it was Chicago, and the fans started heckling her. "Oh, you're trash! You're a woman. Get back in the kitchen!" And she started freaking out. I mean, you can tell she was going at him personally. And a lot of the comments was, "If you can't handle it, don't be a stand-up comedian." But there's often people that say, "Hey, why you disrupting the show?" People there to see a show. So in that kind of situation, that kind of instance, do you think she's wrong to feel that way, or do you think if you're a professional, you gotta kind of be able to roll with whatever comes your way?
I mean, I really genuinely think it depends where you are at emotionally when you get on stage. And, if you get on stage a lot and you're dealing with a lot of interference or a certain kind of energy, I can see how those microaggressions would eventually make someone snap. and just
Yeah.
get incredibly angry. And so, or maybe, she was just like having a bad day beyond that. And then that moment just gave her an opportunity to unleash an already existing bad mood. But when it comes to professionalism, what is professional in a world of art and entertainment? It's about experimentation.
Yeah.
And it was probably pretty memorable for everyone in the crowd to experience whatever it is she brought down. Like, I understand the point of stand-up comedy is around laughter, but
Yeah.
art is not about always feeling good. It's about provocation. It's about consciousness shifting. It's about thinking. It's about experimentation. So when you're in that, mindset, you can't always bring like the pure entertainment comedy stuff to the stage, because how are you going to expand within that context? You have to sometimes take risks. And she
Right.
probably learned something from that. I don't know what, but she must have learned a lot from that experience. Maybe that she doesn't want to do that again, or maybe that she wants to go even harder on people. Who knows?
Right.
But I think in art, we have to leave space for, things to go not the way you planned in order for you to grow as an artist.
Yeah, I 100% agree, and I love comedy. I always, I've done a lot of episodes defending comedy because I think it's in a weird space right now, and that's actually something I want to ask you about because, the days of, the George Carlins, the Andrew Dice Clays, the Richard Pryors are kind of long gone. They can't do that type of content anymore until Dave Chappelle started doing his Netflix specials. That caused the whole uproar with a lot of people. What do you think about the state of comedy now? Do you think that it's, I want to say watered down. I think some people might say it's watered down because you can't do the off the cuff, dark humor type of jokes anymore. To some people, or do you think it's at a good place right now for you? How do you stand in the state of comedy?
Well, I think George Carlin was someone who was genuinely educating the public. So when he was talking about corporate interests, when he was talking about the political parties being basically the same, bird with different wings, that was education that I think is much more exposed today. People have the information today. They just have to choose whether or not to pick it up and believe it. But the information is out there. So I think Carlin and Sam Kinison and all these other people that were, really had an intention to quote unquote wake people up. I actually genuinely don't think you can wake anyone else up but yourself.
Yeah,
But they were sharing their education. That I think is an art form, as like part of the comedic art form that needs to be a little more nuanced now, because otherwise it sounds didactic. Like, I think a lot of times when comedians get too political, like, I'm obviously a very political person, but if I just like say what I think on a stand-up set and there are no jokes and it's not
right.
funny, that's annoying. It sounds preachy. It's not gonna, you can go up there and be like, oh, equal pay for women. I'm like, well, that's not fucking funny, but you can make a joke about it. And you can, if equal pay for women was a message you wanted to get across, you can make many jokes that would elicit that.
Right.
So, but when it comes to censorship around what people can and can't say around jokes, I think it really depends on where your personal, as the comedian, where you are at as a human being. And that energy is something that people will pick up on or not. I've seen some people get away with some fucking shit. Like
Yeah.
Patrice O'Neill, he got away with some fucking shit. Like, I think he's super funny and he says a lot of things that are very problematic about women without a doubt. And I will find myself laughing. Like, I'm like, fuck, like, I don't agree with you at all, but that was fucking funny. So I think someone like Patrice, he was able to get away with a lot of things. And were he still alive today, I don't think he would have censored or watered down his comedy. I think he would have evolved it perhaps, but he was down to clown in the sense of pushing boundaries. And I think that's because he genuinely was a loving person and people could
Right.
see that. So when people are getting like very sensitive about the censorship, I think we should be more concerned with the censorship that exists like around news and media than we are in art, because art is the opportunity to explore how, how to push boundaries. And I think the culture has to let artists push boundaries, but I also think the artist has to be intelligent and sincere and authentic in their boundary pushing, and don't just do it because, oh, it's comedy. It's actually not funny.
Yeah, yeah. That's a good point, and it goes back to I'm forgetting that one comedian from Seinfeld, the one that got canceled for his
Kramer?
racist
Yeah,
Kramer.
that was not
Like,
funny.
it wasn't funny. And I think when you have comedians like that, just deliberately using their own personal feelings as a way to, as comedy, I think that's where we are with comedy. I feel like a lot of people are seeing that some people are using the term comedian to speak their true feelings and hide behind a curtain. But for me, I often say, like you said, it's up to the comedian. As an artist, you draw the line where you want. So some people may not make jokes about women; they don't find it funny. Others will joke on everybody from disabled to race. And so, that's the beautiful thing about art is that you can find it in anything. Speaking of which, finding it in anything, how did you get your start in comedy? Because oftentimes pursuing a career in entertainment, a lot of people say it's not a real job. Get a corporate job. That's what you should be. But being fellow, artists, how did you get into comedy?
Well, for me personally, I started off as an activist. I came of age during a time where I it was like the birth of the internet. There was all this opportunity, I thought, to create real systemic social change. And I think I became very brokenhearted over what it was to be an activist when I realized just how entwined like the activist world was with maintaining the political status quo. Like no one was actually interested in a genuine social revolution. And I was young, I was like devastated. I was like, what? I thought we were going to do a revolution. Like what's happening? And I think that's why I eventually started, this was around the birth of YouTube and new media. So I think new media and the internet was this opportunity to explain a new truth. Like I remember very clearly learning about the prison industrial complex and understanding like my entire historical education was complete propaganda. And I was like, what? Like I went to a good private school and I was taught nothing but propaganda around race and the economy and politics. And that was very eye opening for me as a young person. So I think I got to this idea that, through art is where you're actually going to untangle the consciousness that we need to start, picking apart in order for a genuine social revolution, because the inequality to me was obviously, incredibly problematic and something that I had noticed my whole life. I just didn't necessarily have the language and the words around everything. And with the birth of the internet, there was suddenly this community that was challenging everything, that was challenging the news, that was questioning what they were being told, that was questioning all these narratives around history and current events. And that to me was really inspiring. But at the same time, when everything becomes very academic, I think it alienates people because there's like a certain language around academia. There's a certain rhetoric that pushes people out where people don't feel smart enough or educated enough or comfortable, or they think it's boring. So I think my whole perspective was how to take complicated ideas around social issues and make them like digestible, relatable, interesting, funny, intriguing. And
Yeah.
so that would hopefully spark conversations, which would hopefully spark action.
That's beautifully said. I think that's a brand of comedy and art that we don't see. Well, we're seeing more now. I think it took a long time to get to that point, and I think social media has helped that because now you have a major platform. Because in order, back then, in order to become successful, you had SNL, you had the comedy. What is it? Kings of Comedy, stuff
Mhm.
like that. And in order to grow, you have to kind of get on those platforms. Now you have Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. You have all these other platforms, and even the independent scene is blown to an amazing height. So let me ask you, being that your type of comedy is about, staying in tune with what's going on. Do you find it hard to kind of balance the comedy aspect with the core values of what you're trying to your message, or do you feel like it's easier now because there's so much going on, so much to touch on, that it just the content just kind of comes at you and it makes it easier for you to kind of just center everything?
Well, I think I've been doing this the whole time, and I think people are more open because when I was, starting out making videos, first on YouTube and then on Facebook, I would make these videos that were definitely controversial. Like I would make a video called like "The Real Housewives of White Supremacy," and which is truly some of my best work, and I would make videos about like men's rights activists. I would do all these like sketch comedy videos, but Facebook was like the main uh distribution network for me at that time. And people would watch my videos and they'd be like, they'd be like, I'll watch your video, but I would never share your video on my page. My Aunt Martha follows me, my boss follows me. Like I was just too controversial for the culture. And I mean, I hate this word because it, reeks of marketing terms, but my social capital was too provocative. It was too much for a lot of people. So it was almost like I was like a dirty little secret that people would watch, and I was like, okay. And I think that but I couldn't, it's like once I thought of an idea, I had to do it. And like for me, whenever my brand of comedy is like, there'll be a line and I'll be like, oh, I'm just gonna put one foot over. It'll always be a little too much.
Right.
So there was a long time where nobody would share my content. And then I think with Instagram stories, like then people could only share my content for like 24 hours and they got more comfortable doing that. And I
Yeah.
also do think something about COVID made people a little more open. So then my social capital became less risky. So I think like over time I've become less risky, and then it's like okay to like me and it's okay to share my work or promote me or be affiliated with me. But for a long time,
It was hard.
a decade, yeah.
Yeah, I believe it. I believe it. I think the controversy. I think controversy sells to a certain extent, and I think every artist get to a point who are doing that type of work. They get to a point where you kind of like, all right, if I want to get to the Kevin Hart level, I'm going to have to change what I'm doing, or I can continue doing this. And if I get that chance, I'm taking it. But it's a risk if when you're doing controversial stuff, right? And I want to ask you, do you think that that's something you've thought about? Maybe I should take my comedy a different direction, or is this something that you truly stand on? And look, some people may not like it, but other people will. And it's your art, it's your truth. Have you ever got to that point though, where you just kind of like, maybe I need to rebrand myself and take a different approach?
I mean, it's interesting you say that. Like, when I think of the opportunities that I've had over the time where like, like the you can, as a woman, you can fuck your way into certain scenarios.
Yeah,
That's something you're asked to do often, which I don't think I've never met a male comic who was like, oh no, I had to give a couple blowjobs to get here. Like now I'm here, but that
yeah.
is a position that women are put into constantly. And so, I always I'm like, why would I like fuck a guy for a slice of pizza, but not for my career? But I just I could never do it. Like in the moment, I would just be like, I can't fucking do it, my dude. Like, absolutely not. So there was always that barrier around like how I would use my body to get what I wanted. And like, I just couldn't do it. And then, not that I don't understand why people do it, by the way, it
Yeah.
makes a lot of sense, but I just, and I again, like psychologically, I'm confused because I truly have like fucked a guy for a slice of pizza once, or like a guy I didn't even like because I just like felt weird being like, I should go home, like, so that like cognitive dissonance is its own journey. But there was something about my career that was so precious to me and so real, like it was like too much of who I was to just kind of like do that. And then around being political, the amount of times I've been told by executives, agents, um, managers that I'm too political, especially as a woman. I think men do, there is more opportunity for them to be political and for that to be accepted because they can be a voice of politics. And for women, you're either kind of like manipulated to be a voice of the right wing propaganda machine or the left wing propaganda machine, to have like a nuanced opinion about, uh, society is going to be problematic. So, yeah, no, there's been many times where I'm like, I could just write a script about like periods or something, or I could just make a sketch about like my tits and like, here's my butt. Like, I could have done that so many times. And for whatever reason, I'm like, but instead, I like physically have to talk about genocide.
Yeah.
And I actually cannot not do that. I could not live with myself.
I don't blame. It's that's a whole conversation that I've had with a lot of people on this platform and off camera. It's especially now with the whole P Diddy thing, no baby oil included in this conversation. But I think oftentimes in this industry, because comedy acting is all the same industry, entertainment. Yes, I do feel like, and I was going to ask you, do you think women comedians have it harder? But I'm thinking about it. Of course they do, because what you just said. If you want to get to certain situations, not to say it doesn't happen to men, but generally happens to a lot of women. You get to a point where if you want to get that big deal, you're going to have to do a big deal for somebody else. And I
Yeah.
think that is the one good thing I'm starting to see changing in this industry, is that we're getting the old perverts out. We're getting the people who put people in those type of situations out of here, because for the longest time this industry has thrived on that. In order to get to the top, you have to climb on top, and it's not right, because there's very talented people who don't want to sell themselves short in that aspect, and then they never get those opportunities because they didn't want to do the deed at 2 o'clock in the morning. What do you think, though? Do you think that with all these cases, Harvey Weinstein, P Diddy, and all the stuff going on, do you think we're at a changing of a guard point in the entertainment industry, or do you think this is just it goes too deep and it's going to take a lot longer for this to kind of clean itself out?
Yeah, the second. I mean, I think the fact that you had the Jeffrey Epstein and the P. Diddy legal cases disintegrate before our eyes within the same week is a message to the public that, like, it ain't over. It ain't even close to being over. And, like, for me, the P. Diddy stuff hit really hard because, hip hop is a huge part of my life. I'm a dancer, I dance to hip hop music. I feel like truly most myself when I'm listening to hip hop music. So the fact that the industry went after hip hop when these grapey allegations are happening within the political spectrum, within Hollywood, within all of the musical industry, it felt like really targeted, really racist ultimately. And then also, I feel as if, like, with P. Diddy, I feel definitely with Usher, all of these people. I even feel it with Cosby, to be honest. Like, I think these were people that were violated first. And
Yeah,
then they became a perpetrator in order to make sense of the level of degradation and violation they experienced. So I don't see individuals as the problem. I don't think that's fair to humans. I think there is a system that's been going on for truly a long time. I wonder about Sammy Davis Jr. I wonder about anyone who's like who's been handed a platter of a platform, and
yeah,
what they had to do and how they had to compromise and what they could and couldn't say. And so I don't think we're anywhere close at all to dealing with any of this, and that's what these court cases are letting us know. And the mental gymnastics the Trumpies are doing to now make sense of the Jeffrey Epstein list. They're like, yeah, they'd be like, my dudes, we've been going on and on about this list for so long, and now people are like, what list? I'm like,
yeah,
uh so I don't think we're like anywhere close, which is why I think social media is the tits, because
yeah,
now you have a direct relationship to, I don't need a manager. I can do a national tour with no manager or no agent. I can have as many executives saying that they're terrified of me as they want, and I can still, perform and do shows.
yeah. That 100% true. I'll make one quick note about what you just said, and then we'll move on, because I've talked about these cases enough, And like for me, I often say this is P. Diddy is just a face to a growing problem. It happened to him, he's doing it to other people, and so on and so forth. And this is the time when I know it's funny, I know I make jokes, but I oftentimes tell people, okay, we can all make the Diddy memes and stuff. But at the end of the day, there are true, victims of these type of crimes, and it's not funny. Like look at Justin Bieber. I don't know what he's went through, but
A lot.
clearly something happened to him. And
Yeah.
instead of making fun of him and joking on him, be there. You was a Bieber fan when you was 14, 15. Why are you changing on him now? And I think oftentimes that is the biggest issue is that, yes, fans, we might support people, but then we also find the humor and everything, and we don't connect the dots and we don't support the people who went through this. It's just a generational cycle that keeps happening. But, at the end of the day, all we can do is just try to keep it forward. And with the older people dying off and the newer generations rising, eventually we'll get to the point where it's cleansed. But there's always going to be freak offs happening. I lived in LA. Trust me, I've heard of quite a few. But enough of that. Let's get back to the action, shall we? So you've been doing stand-up comedy for a while. You're also a filmmaker. You also host your own shows. Tell me, how did you kind of evolve from doing stand-up to doing a bunch of different things? Because I remember, during the pandemic, I had a conversation with one of my agents, and they said, you have to diversify yourself. This is an entertainment business, so you can't just be an actor who do TV shows. You can't just be a stand-up comedian who only does stand-up. You have to be able to do films, voiceovers, other work, commercials. So for you, when did you kind of realize, hey, I can make a name in all different sectors and tie them all together?
Well, I think for me, like my first love is writing, and I love to write. And so, it started for me with writing articles, and then it started with writing short films and sketches and stand up and storytelling. So, I just love writing, and I love the process of writing, and the performance came after the writing. The performance aspect for me came because I couldn't wait around for some flaky actor to bring my vision to light. No offense. No offense, but actors need.
None taken.
So I just started putting myself in things in order to get things going. I taught myself film. I taught myself how to edit. I just taught myself everything because I wanted to have an idea, execute the idea, put the idea out there. And I think the thing that came to me about, with stand up is I've been doing stand up for a while, like going into the clubs, going into different arenas where, you as a woman, as any stand up, most of the time, if you're not headlining that show, you're constantly proving yourself to the audience. And I felt like there was a little bit of a ceiling of how deep I could go with people
Right.
within that context because I was like trying to make them like me, trying to make them laugh, and also understanding that they came to see a comedy show and I wanted to provide them with what they came for. But when I started, headlining my own shows beyond stand up, I wrote a show called Go to Your Womb, which was a show about parenting that I did with my 13-year-old daughter. But really, it was about like intergenerational trauma and not how not to pass it on. But it was a comedy and it was like it was all sketches. I brought that to the Edinburgh Fringe Festival. I wrote a show with my partner, Sarah, called Grape Culture, which is about grape culture, but it's a comedy. It's like a pure comedy. Like truly people laugh so much at a 80-minute show about grape. Like you wouldn't believe how much people will laugh at that show. And then I wrote another show called Men Come Inside of Me, about toxic masculinity, but like how I am a toxic man and the toxic man that lives inside of me. And it's really about like building empathy between the genders. And they're super clowny, they're sketchy, there's costumes, there's lots of props. Like they're very like wild, psychedelic, almost like Pee-wee's Playhouse,
Oh, yeah.
vibes. So once I started getting the idea of all these shows, I was like, oh, I'll just like see if people come to these shows. So, I have a life of stand up that is like the classic, hey, bada bing. But then I can do these shows that have all these different elements of dance, clown, sketch. And it's like a wild, psychedelic. It's truly a bit like smoking peyote, going to one of
Right.
my shows. And also, the way I can interact with the crowd is different. Like you can do crowd work at a comedy show, but you have to kind of like play with consent a little. But at my show, I'm like, it's going down, you know, like things are going to happen between me and the crowd. Like people are, stuff is going to go down. So I felt like there was just so much freedom that opened up when I started like writing these like hour-long solo and duo shows, that I could just take people to places that I couldn't as just a pure stand-up.
You know, this sounds like something that should be on America's Got Talent. When are we going to see you on there?
I know, right? I need my Netflix special.
I was going. That's a question for later. But I gotta check out one of these shows because you know, for me, I always people always tell me I should do comedy. Now I'm not gonna lie, I'm a raunchy son of a gun. I'm from New York City, so you know I love the dark jokes and all that stuff. So I already know a place like LA, I would get canceled immediately. But for you, like how has your evolution been, not only as an artist and as a comedy, but just as a person, like being on that stage? Like I feel like I've gotten wiser in my young years just because I had to learn how to be a certain way and you know learn from the crowd and take that into my art and grow from that. For you, is that something that is always a continuous journey for you, or do you think you're at a place now where you can, I wouldn't say content in the sense of you're content on your art, but you're content on where you are as a professional entertainer, and you just want to continue to build upon that?
Yeah, I think contentment is a feeling I've never felt in my entire life. Nothing is ever good enough. Like I'll do something and I'll be like, what's the next thing? What's happening after this? Like it truly does not matter what I've accomplished. I will be proud of myself for zero point 0.7 seconds, like barely, before I'm like, okay, what's next? What's next? You know? So I don't know what contentment is. I truly don't. I think for me, it's just about like getting a show. Like I felt like my Men Come Inside of Me show, it got to a point where I'm like, this is a banger. You know, I just feel like when I'm bringing it, I'm excited to perform it. I kind of feel like I really put my heart into it. I know people are going to have a good time. And there's something that's like that container is really exciting. But now I'm already on to my next show. I want to do a show about white women, you know? So like I want to just have like a roster of like all these shows that I feel are just like, they slap. I just want to have shows that slap. And then I want to tour them around. And
Right.
just but keep writing more shows and like using the element of stand up, because in all my shows like stand up is a part of it, but it's not all of it. And I really do like the format of like kind of multimedia and multidisciplinary and taking it a little bit beyond stand up because I'm such a goofy person. And also I do think there's something about audience interaction and like the unstable molecule of what happens when you like one on Men Come Inside of Me. I brought this one guy on stage, and usually I had a dummy, like I have a fake man that I do this whole I like hump myself as I like dress the fake man as me, and it's like it's about me learning to like love myself. So there's a whole like self seduction but with my fake man. But I didn't want to travel with my fake man because I was like I didn't want to like check another bag. The fake man was pretty big. So then I
Yeah.
was like, well, I'll just like bring the outfit and I'll put a man in the fake man and then we'll do like a seduction together. I didn't know this fucking man. I had no idea. I just pulled a man on stage and like our tongues got so close. Like it was like I could have never anticipated like what this guy would or wouldn't let me do, but the things that this guy let me do, that was exciting, you know? And I don't know how I picked the right guy. I just happened to pick the right motherfucker. So things like that, you know, I think are really when you have that kind of element in a show, no, everyone's like, what's gonna happen, including me.
Yeah. So, do you like what it seems to me that you're not really a stamp? You're more of a comedian who's an entertainer, and I think there's a difference. I think what you're doing is something like I said. I can see it on Netflix. I can see it on America's Got Talent. So, actually, I'm gonna ask this question now. What is your ultimate goal? Like, is this something you want to turn to maybe like maybe a TV show? Or maybe just a Netflix deal, or just bring it to like a bigger and bigger stage and introduce like newer comedians too. So you know maybe you can give them the rub a little bit. Like what is your like biggest? And when I say biggest, everybody's goal is going to be different because you'll hit that goal and then you want something else. But like, what is your ultimate like goal?
I think my ultimate goal is what you're saying is to like be able to perform these shows on bigger and bigger stages. Of course I have a TV pilot. Of course I've written all these things. But anytime I like bring my work to the status quo of Hollywood, I get the feedback. It's too political. It's too risky. You're too risky. Your social media is too risky. So it's like the way that I kind of see my career is I just have to keep building on my own to a point where either it's an undeniable investment or I just keep, with the self grassroots thing that I've been doing, which also it is sustainable if you
Right.
hustle. But I have to hustle. But and the joy of the hustle is that I'm not waiting to be accepted. No one has to tell me that like, oh, we want you. The only people that have to tell me they want me are the people that come or don't come to the shows.
Right. That's a hard pill to swallow in this business. A lot of people don't like being told no. I got used to it because that's all most actors hear. But I think what you said hit me for a second because I feel like as artists, we do get to that point where some people give up when they're in that situation where you're putting all this time, low paid jobs, spending all your money to, pursue this, and then you get told, nah, I don't want it. And then you just give up. But one of the things you said though, political. I Unfortunately for me, I've seen the downsides to that, and I'll never forget. I know during the pandemic, I was talking about the riots and everything, and I had one guy hit me up on Instagram, and he was like, "Hey, I don't like the way you're talking about politics," and he thought I was a Trump supporter. I wasn't, but he assumed that. And then he DM'd my agent on Instagram and said, "Hey, you need to check out this episode. He's a Trumpy," and so I never got in trouble for it. But when I started seeing the blowback from people, I've noticed, and being a stand-up comedian is different. I think you can get away with it a lot more than an actor would. But for me, not being a Denzel Washington yet, I saw that okay, if a casting director, if a manager, if an agent, or somebody in this industry don't like what I'm doing, they're not casting me nothing. Disney's not going to take a chance. And unfortunately, I've had these kind of conversations with people, usually off camera, because most people don't want to kind of give their secrets away. But like, how do you get to that point for you? Because a lot of people want the fame, they want the money, they want the status. Like, how do you get to that point where you're like, oh, I'll do it myself, my time will come? Like, how do you get to that point? Because it takes so many people years, decades to even just get close to that.
Yeah, no, the level of rejection that one experiences, like submitting to film festivals, submitting to comedy festivals, submitting your stuff to agents, submitting your stuff, auditioning. Here's a script. Do you want my script? You don't want my script? Yeah, it is shamanic how you have to learn how to just okay, all right, no. And
Yeah.
that was something that I have obviously experienced so much of, but with social media and like with building a fan base and like a direct connection to your audience, there is some empowerment to that. And now I have this direct connection, so I can say, hey, I'm coming to Austin, who wants me in Austin? And someone will DM me, and then I'll say, oh, what's a cool venue? And then they'll give me a venue, and I'll be like, do you know that person? Maybe they do. And then I get an introduction. I'm like, hey, you want me to come? And they'll be like, yeah, that sounds cool. And so like it takes work.
Yeah.
I don't just get to like sit down and be like, now I'm here. Like I have to fucking hustle. I have to be like, who wants me? How do you want me? And then I have to be like, I'm here now. Do you want to come? Do you
Yeah.
want to come see me? But so far, because I have that direct relationship to an audience, they are coming out. But I am doing the work to provide them with something to come out to. It's not happening for me. And I think what would be probably nice about being, an actor is like you audition and then like you get the part and everyone else is doing all that. You just have to act. You just have to do your art. I have to do the business. I have to do the promotion. I have to do the producing. Like there's so many hats one has to wear. But
Yeah.
if you just like admit like, okay, this is what I'm fucking doing. I'm wearing these hats. And you're like the man with the many hats. Why did that guy wear so many fucking hats in the first place? Those stupid ass I hate those hats. But I am that guy with all those stupid newsy caps, you know?
Yeah.
Just doing everything myself.
I
Design
respect it.
I design my own like what's it called? Flyers, you know? I just learned Photoshop, you know? Like I just have to learn computer programs like a dork.
I'll completely respect it because, I often tell people like, if you want to just do one thing, like you said, if you just want to be an actor and just do that, yeah, all you gotta do is audition. You're gonna get told no a lot more times than you say yes, especially when you start auditioning for TV shows and stuff. But for me, like I tell people, I do this myself. Like this podcast, everything involving this, I do myself. I don't have an editing team. Yes, I might, have a couple people who will help me in certain things, but for the most part, everything I do myself. And I think for a lot of people, they don't understand the hard work. And that's why I often say, like, when people say, oh, get a real job. Well, I do more than you do at your job. You
Oh
just don't see that. Right. And I think a lot of people just see the final product, but they don't see the hours of staying up until 4 in the morning to, perfect the script like you're doing, memorizing the lines. Maybe, you have to get ready for, an audition or something. It takes a lot more work. Editing, social media is a whole nother thing. Creating content, that's a whole nother skill I had to learn myself. So, I appreciate it. But one thing I want to ask you, someone asked me this question the other day, and I think it would be a good question to ask you. So let's say Bill Gates came and he said, hey, I'll give you $250 million right now, cash app, whatever you prefer. I'll give it to you right now. But you have to stop what you're doing. No more, no more writing, no more comedy, no more filmmaking, no more nothing. I give you 250. You just enjoy the rest of your life. Would you take that deal?
It's such an interesting question because I understand the seduction of money and security. I'm not like shitting on that and how real that is. But the thing about the artistic process, like when you really are obsessed with it, is that it gives your life meaning.
Yeah.
Every single thing that happens to me, everything that happens to me, good, bad, ugly, beautiful, is part, it will go into my art. It will go into my work. It will be repackaged and represented and examined and looked at. So my life, like the events of my life, have this endless meaning because everything in my life I then put into the work I'm doing. And I just, I don't know, like psychologically, if it would be worth it to me to just like have security
Yeah.
without meaning. And I understand the seduction of security, I really do, but there is there's so many wealthy people that are psychologically bored out of their fucking minds because they don't have genuine meaning. And what is the point of life? Is it to be comfortable? I don't know.
Yeah.
Or is it to be alive? Is it to explore meaning? Is it to self-reflect? Is it to feel the widest spectrum of emotion you possibly can and learn how to digest, process, and fertilize the garden of your life with it? I mean,
Yeah. I thought about that question. And as you was talking, I was thinking about it more. And for me, I kind of think of it this way. I'm asking you this question, hypothetically, I'm just saying, and then forming this question. I'm not asking to see if you care about the money. I want to see if you're really truly invested in what you're doing. Because, like, for me, when you look at the all-time greats, whether it's Denzel, whether it's Bernie Mac, or whatever it's, Michael Jordan, the greats, they eat, sleep, and breathe what they do. They don't care about the glitz and the glamour that comes with it. Yeah, of course, everybody wants that and enjoys it. But if they had to give it up just to do what they're doing, they would not take it. And I think, again, it's easy said and done. If you're strapped for cash, behind on bills, I'm not gonna judge. But I think if you really care about what you're doing, it's not an easy answer. Let me tell you, 250. I mean, I don't know what I could do with that, but I think if your true purpose is what you're doing, it makes it a little easier to say no. I wouldn't take that offer. But it's an interesting question I wanted to ask you. Now, we're at that point of the show where this is not just a podcast, this is a show. And I like to spice things up and make it hard for people. So, Tony, we've been having a great conversation, but now it's the hot seat. Now, you may not be familiar with the hot seat, but oftentimes I always feel like, we often have to make a choice in life, And this one is not life or death. It's just pure fun. But it makes you, I put you in a hot seat, make you choose between two people, and you don't have to give a reason. You could just say I like this one more than the other, or you could just give a name.
Okay.
So this is gonna be the comedian special for you. So I'm gonna give you two names, and you just choose whatever you want. And you don't have to give a deep dive. You can just say it if you want to. You can. But are you ready for the hot seat?
I'm ready. I love a hot seat.
All right, let's do this. All right. So let's do Chris Rock or Will Smith. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. There goes my interview with Chris Rock. All right, let me stop. Let me stop. All right. Uh let's do Chris Rock or Eddie Murphy.
Eddie Murphy.
Martin Lawrence or Dave Chappelle.
I mean, Martin was such a dick. So I'm going to go with Dave Chappelle, even though he's a controversial figure. He's a controversial man, but he's also brought me a lot of joy.
Yeah. I'm not gonna give my opinions. I have my choices, but all right, so let's do Richard Pryor or Bernie Mac.
Oh, Richard Pryor.
Richard Pryor. Let's do Tim Allen or Steve Martin.
Steve Martin.
Let's do Jerry Seinfeld or Robin Williams.
Jerry Seinfeld is a piece of shit. I'll go with Robin Williams.
Touche. All right, fair enough, fair enough. All right, Kevin Hart or Chris Tucker.
Well, I'll go with Kevin.
Kevin. Okay. All right. All right. How about Woody Allen or I want Bill Cosby.
Oh, Grapo City. Jeez Louise.
I
I'm going to go with Woody Allen, the pedo Grapo, unfortunately.
I I was trying to remember his name, and then I just felt like I got shot up with something. No, let me stop. Let me stop.
So we're
Uh,
in
uh,
Grapo City with a lot of these people.
yeah.
Controversial men for sure.
Hey, don't hate me. All right. I'm just asking a hot seat questions. That's it. All right. How about Andrew Dice Clay? I'm trying to think who's a raunchy. Nobody's like him. That's a problem. All right. Let's do this. Let's do this. Jim Carrey or Robin Williams.
Jim Carrey.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
I gotta think about that one. Now let me give me 1 second. I wanna do another one with you. So Sarah Silverman or Amy Schumer. I kind of already know the answer,
Oh,
but
Sarah, definitely.
what's wrong with Amy? She's amazing.
Amy, Amy's a bit of a genocide supporter.
Yeah, I think you just got it all wrong. That's it. All right, Wanda Sykes or Tina Fey.
Wanda.
Wanda Sykes or Tiffany Haddish.
I mean, I love Tiffany, but still Wanda. She's pretty tight.
Leslie Jones or Lucille Ball.
Ooh.
Mm,
I mean, Lucille was pretty revolutionary for her time. So I think I got to go with her, although I really do like Leslie's energy.
that's a fair choice. That's a fair choice. Chelsea Handler or Kristen Wiig.
Kristen Wiig.
How about Kill Tony or Jeff Ross?
Oh, both. I'll go with Jeff. Kill Tony is such. After that, Trumpo, I wanted to vomit.
Yeah, Kill Tony. Yeah, he's yeah. Yep, that's him. All right, Bill Burr or choices. Hmm. Let's do Bill Burr or Ellen DeGeneres. No,
Oh, Bill Burr.
easy. Now, for the final one, I'll put the two biggest comedians right now: Kevin Hart or Dave Chappelle. Let me record this right now so I have it for evidence.
I mean, I do not stand by anything he says about the trans community. Let us be clear. Not one thing he says. But Dave Chappelle is an amazing comedian.
I completely agree. I completely
You need to
agree. I
shut
think,
the fuck up about it. I like just shut
yeah,
your fucking mouth.
but the good thing about art is that I think with him, and I see people chew him out all the time about his comment. I think the point, and maybe I'm wrong. I know not everybody's going to agree, but I think for him, I think he was just kind of one of those people who's like, "Hey, why can I make jokes about these type of people, but I can't make jokes about you?" And I think that's earlier the question I was asking, like, what do you about? One of the things I was thinking about when I asked you about the state of comedy is that there are a lot of people who say Dave Chappelle is someone who's bringing comedy back. He's allowing people to just get joked on all across the board. And then there's some people who say, "Well, you're doing it on purpose now, like you're antagonizing people." It's a fascinating concept. We don't have to get into it, but it's that's the beautiful thing about art is that you can choose and support whoever you want, and
I guess since I did say Dave to defend myself, because I genuinely do not agree with his comments on trans,
yeah.
just to defend my opinion, I think that what Dave did around race with the Dave Chappelle show was really, really interesting and important.
Hmm.
And I think he has this very nuanced understanding around whiteness in America, blackness in America, that he should apply to women and trans people and gay people. And it's
Yeah.
like my frustration with him is like, I know he's really fucking smart. And so why not apply that intelligence to all oppressed people versus just like a group you most identify with? I think that would be my critique with him, because I think he could have done really interesting comedy around transphobia. That could have been maybe more interesting topic, you
Yeah.
know? So, it's like when he did the black KKK member, the black blind KKK member. I can't remember.
Classic. Yeah.
Yeah, like he did some really brilliant work. And I just would have wanted to see that brilliance around, like, again, all oppressed people.
Yeah, I could understand that. I can understand that point. I think for him it's different because he left for so well. I would say so long, but it was what over 13 years he left. So for him, when he left it at a he left an era where all these type of conversations were they were just regular day, and then now you're coming to a society where those type of jokes aren't accepted. Look at Andrew Dice Clay. I personally think his comedy was hilarious, but we all know that he's not getting as much work anymore because he didn't evolve with the times. That I think that's the greatest. That's the best way. He didn't evolve with the times, and I think that is what makes an artist so great. Is that yes, you can still do what you're doing, but evolve because Eddie Murphy's Raw. I don't know if he could do it in this era, and that's all right. He just would have to, remix a couple things, redo a couple things, and it would probably still be big. But you just have to evolve. Maybe I'm wrong on that aspect, but you're the comedian, so you tell me.
No, I think evolution is important. And again, it is where you're coming from and like what your intention is. And I
Yeah,
think like what people were really reacting to with Chappelle was like, what is your intention? What is your message? Like what is the objective here with this work? Where I think like his work that really, I mean, I remember that stand up bit he had about the cops coming to his house, and like he was like they're gonna beat him up because they wouldn't believe that he owned that house because it was like a nice house. That's a really great bit about police brutality and about race. So again, it's just like, how can you have like such nuance, like excellent comedy around one subject and not apply it? And that's what I would have wanted to see from him, because he does have this really like brilliant, intelligent mind, and he could be doing it to further a conversation rather than to stunt it.
Yeah. I do know that that's a criticism a lot of people said. I feel like, I do like his specials, but I do understand where people come from. Where a lot of people did feel like a lot of it were preachy and not so much comedy. It was just kind of more like poking fun at certain things. But not everybody's gonna be everybody's cup of tea, and I hope that no matter what anybody does, that they continue on, because at the end of the day, the only art we can love is our own. And I hope that for you, because it seems like you're doing what you set out to do. You're killing it. You're successful. I need a little bit of the rub myself, but we'll talk off camera about that one. Now I'm kidding. But what you got going on? Anything you got lined up for the summer? Any major announcements you want to break on the show? I mean,
Oh yeah,
I'm
well
on.
go to my website, toninaj.com, TONINAGY.com. I have a podcast called Come Inside of Me. I have another podcast with my friend Sarah called Gnarly Girls. Both links are there on my website. And then I have a bunch of shows coming up this fall in the East Coast and West Coast for Men Come Inside of Me and my stand-up, and Grape Culture, the show I do with my friend Sarah. So I'll be touring in the fall and winter.
Awesome. Now, are you going to go on America's Got Talent? I think you should
I don't
next
think
season.
America Got Talent wants anything to do with me, but if you insist, I will try.
No, I thought about doing it. I just feel like they're biased to singers. That's the only thing. But at least if you go into it, one of the things I kind of learned about this industry is if you just market yourself, get your face out there. That's all it takes. It only takes one person to see your comedy. Next thing you know, you're opening up for Dave Chappelle.
Well, that would be its own controversy. I think I don't want to get canceled. I just want to not be canceled.
Yeah, that would be a little too much. A little too much.
Now Toni opening up for Woody Allen. She's like, comedy. I'm like,
Special guest
no.
appearance by Bill Cosby, right?
It was an impossible choice. I was in a hot seat.
Hey, I'm just an average man just trying to do right. And I'm just trying to be like you, out there doing my thing, making my stamp in this world, and just leaving a better place than I left it. And you're doing that. Any final messages for people who are, even, whether they're fans or just now finding you? Any final message you want to give to people out there listening right now?
If you're a struggling artist, keep struggling.
Amen to that. Get them dollar slices from Walmart, and just keep eating those Wonder Bread sandwiches, because one day you will be eating surf and turf, and that's the bottom line. Not just because Tony says so, but because the most charismatic man says so. Thank you, Tony, for coming on. It was a blast. I'm looking forward to the next conversation. I'm supposed to be, you and yeah. Actually, I won't spoil it. Y'all gonna have to wait to see. But thank you again for tuning in to another episode. Tony, it's been amazing to have you on, talk to you, get to know you. And, I wish you all more success in your career. I already know the Netflix specials are coming, the biggest stages are coming. It's just a matter of when, not if. And, that's the final note for me. I hope everybody has a great day. Take care. And like I always say, a helping hand is a better hand. You don't got to go home, but you can't stay here. We'll see you later.
Yeah.